My name is Eleanor Ellie Prescott. I'm 87 years old, and for 41 years, I have set one extra place at my Christmas table for a son who was supposed to be dead. Everyone in Savannah, Georgia, believes Captain Thomas Prescott, U.S. Army, died in a hero in the Mekong Delta in 1982. There is a bronze star in my parlor, a folded flag in a triangular case, and a grave in Bonaventure Cemetery with his name carved deep. There is also a lie. I kept that lie polished and shining for 4 decades because I thought it was kinder than the truth. Until last April, when a plain white envelope arrived from Perth, Western Australia, postmarked 04/03/2025, with handwriting I would have known blindfolded. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a photograph. The letter began, "Dear Mama, if you're reading this, I'm still too much of a coward to phone. I didn't die in 82. I ran. I'm sorry." The photograph showed a man in his late 60s, salt and pepper beard, deep tan, standing on a beach holding a little girl about 6 years old. On the back, in the same handwriting, "Me and your granddaughter, Sarah. She's never known anything about you. That changes now, if you'll let it." I sat down right there on the foyer floor, 87 years old, and cried for the first time since the telegram came in 1982. Thomas's story was in the letter. Drug charges in Saigon, desertion, new identity papers bought in Bangkok, 41 years as Tom Preston, fisherman, husband, now widower, father of one daughter he had never told about his American past. He wrote that he was dying, liver cancer, 6 months to live, and could no longer carry the shame. He wanted forgiveness. He wanted his daughter Sarah to know her grandmother before it was too late. I read the letter 7 times. Then I called my attorney, Letitia Beaumont, yes, her again, and said, "Letitia, I need the entire estate retitled by Christmas. Everything. The house on Oglethorpe Square, the trust, the timberland, the stocks, every dime, goes to Miss Sarah Elizabeth Prescott, age 37, currently residing in Fremantle, Western Australia. My other 3 children get the family Bible and my blessing." Letitia didn't ask why. She just said, "Consider it done, Miss Ellie." I spent the next 8 months preparing the biggest Christmas surprise Savannah has ever seen, and I never told a soul, not yet. My 3 living children, Margaret, 64, Robert, 62, and Caroline, 59, had spent the last 41 years acting like the Prescott fortune was already theirs to divide. Margaret, the eldest, runs the Savannah Historical Foundation and never misses a chance to remind people she is a direct descendant of General Prescott of the Revolution. Robert owns half the commercial docks on the river and calls me every quarter to review the portfolio. Caroline married a cardiologist, lives in Atlanta, and sends Christmas cards with a professional photographer takes on the steps of their Buckhead mansion. They all still talk about when Mother passes, as casually as they talk about the tard. Every December 23, they descend on the house on Oglethorpe Square with their spouses, their children, their designer luggage, and their lists of things they might want to keep for sentimental reasons. This year, I let them. I smiled, served eggnog, and watched them measure curtains with their eyes while I quietly arranged plane tickets for 2 strangers from Perth. Sarah and her 6-year-old daughter, Ava, arrived in Savannah on December 21st. I met them at the airport myself. No chauffeur, just me and my old Buick with the dented fender. Sarah stepped off the plane looking exactly like Thomas at 37. Same hazel eyes, same stubborn chin. Ava had his crooked smile. I hugged them so hard I cried into Sarah's hair. She whispered, "Poor thing, didn't know whether to hug back or run." On the drive home, I told them everything except the part about the money. I wanted that to be Christmas morning magic. We put them in the East Wing, the bedrooms that haven't been used since the children were small. Maria, the ones Margaret had already labeled future Airbnb suites. Sarah kept saying, "Mrs. Prescott, we don't want to impose." I told her, "Child, you couldn't impose if you tried. Your blood." On December 24th, the rest of the family arrived like clockwork. Margaret swept in with color swatches for when we update the drapes. Robert carried a bottle of 30-year scotch for Daddy's memory. Caroline brought her usual fruitcake that could anchor a ship. None of them noticed the 2 extra stockings on the mantel labeled Sarah and Ava in my own embroidery. I just smiled and served cider. That night, I laid out tomorrow's plan like a general before battle. Letitia would be here at 10 a.m. with the documents. The photographer from the Savannah Morning News would be here at 10:15 for the annual Prescott family Christmas portrait. The string quartet from the cathedral would arrive at 10:30, and at 11 o'clock sharp, when everyone had finished their second mimosa and was feeling very pleased with themselves, I would open Thomas's letter. I went to bed humming "O Come All Ye Faithful" and slept like a baby. Christmas morning dawned clear and cold, perfect Savannah winter weather. The house smelled of cinnamon rolls, coffee, and the pine garland Maria had wound around every banister. At 9:45, the children and grandchildren gathered in the parlor in their holiday best, already arguing over who would sit closest to me for the photograph. Margaret wore red velvet and pearls. Robert had on a new blazer with gold buttons. Caroline's cardiologist husband kept checking his Rolex. Little Ava, 6 years old and fearless, sat on the floor in front of the tree, playing with the antique wooden Noah's Ark I'd had since 1942. Sarah stood quietly by the window in a simple green dress, looking like she still expected someone to tell her she didn't belong. At 10 o'clock sharp, Letitia Beaumont arrived in a navy suit, carrying a leather folio and the calm smile of a woman who has seen every kind of family greed and lived to tell about it. At 10:15, the newspaper photographer set up his tripod. At 10:30, the string quartet began warming up with green sleeves. My 3 children finally noticed something was different. Margaret frowned at Sarah. "Who is this woman, Mother?" I smiled. "You'll find out in 5 minutes. Everyone take your seats." They sat, confused but still sure whatever was coming would end with them richer. At exactly 11 o'clock, I stood, walked to the mantel, and took down Thomas's letter from its hiding place behind the creche. The room went quiet enough to hear the clock tick. I held the letter up so they could all see the Australian stance. 41 years ago, I began, voice steady as the river at low tide. The army told me my son Thomas died a hero in Vietnam. I wore black for a year. I visited that empty grave every Sunday. I raised his 3 younger siblings on the story that their brother gave his life for his country. I paused. Margaret shifted. Robert cleared his throat. 6 months ago, I learned the truth. Thomas did not die. He deserted. He ran. And for 41 years, he lived in Australia under the name Tom Preston. Gasps. A wine glass slipped from Caroline's hand and shattered on the heart pine floor. I opened the letter and began to read aloud, every word. When I reached the part about Sarah and little Ava, I looked up. Thomas is dying. He has one daughter he never told about us. Her name is Sarah Elizabeth Prescott, and she is standing right there by the window with her daughter Ava, your niece and great-niece. You could have heard a camellia petal fall. Margaret stood up so fast her chair tipped over. This is preposterous, some con artist. I raised one hand. DNA results are in the envelope, Margaret. Would you like to see them in front of the newspaper photographer? She sat back down. I continued. Thomas asked for forgiveness. I gave it. He asked that his daughter finally know her family. I'm giving her more than that. I nodded to Letitia. Letitia stepped forward with the calm authority of a woman who has never lost a case. As of December 23, 2025, Mrs. Eleanor Prescott has executed a new estate plan. The entire Prescott Trust, real property, investments, and personal assets, valued in excess of $42 million, have been irrevocably transferred to Miss Sarah Elizabeth Prescott and her heirs. Dead silence. Then Robert exploded. You can't do this, we're your children. I looked at him the way I looked at him when he was 8 and lied about breaking the window. Robert, you stopped being my child the day you started counting my money instead of my birthdays. All of you did. I turned to Sarah, who was crying quietly. Sarah, Ava, welcome home. The string quartet, bless their hearts, struck up Joy to the World at the perfect moment. The photographer's camera clicked like gunfire, and my 3 living children sat in their Christmas finery, looking like they'd been slapped with the ghost of Christmas past, present, and future all at once. Margaret recovered first, because Margaret always recovers first. She stood up again, voice shaking but loud enough for the photographer to hear every word. Mother, this is elder abuse. This woman has obviously manipulated you. We will contest this will in every court from here to Atlanta. I smiled the smile I used to give beauty pageant judges who asked why I didn't smile more. Margaret, honey, the will isn't a will anymore. It's 6 irrevocable trusts, 3 charitable remainder annuities, and 1 lifetime estate already recorded at the Chatham County Courthouse. Letitia saw to that. There's nothing left to contest except your own behavior. Letitia opened her folio and laid copies on the coffee table like a poker player showing a royal flush. Caroline started crying, loud, theatrical tears. Robert just stared at the ceiling like he was calculating how many yachts he'd have to sell. Little Ava tugged on Sarah's sleeve. "Mummy, why's everyone mad at Grandma Ellie?" Sarah knelt down, wiped her daughter's cheeks, and said in her soft Australian accent, "They're not mad at Grandma, love. They're just surprised." I walked over, took Ava's hand, and led her to the Christmas tree. "Sweetheart, every ornament on this tree has a story. This one," I lifted a tiny wooden soldier, "was carved by your grandfather Thomas when he was 9. He's the reason you're here today." Ava's eyes went wide. "My daddy made that?" "He did. And now it's yours, along with everything else." The photographer's camera clicked again. Margaret tried one last time. "Mother, think of the family name. Think of the scandal." I turned to her, calm as sunrise. "Margaret, the family name survived yellow fever, Sherman's March, and your father's gambling debts in Biloxi. It will survive the truth." Then I did something I'd never done in 87 years of Prescott Christmases. I asked my 3 living children to leave. "Margaret, Robert, Caroline, you have 30 minutes to pack whatever personal belongings you want from the guest rooms. After that, the locks will be changed. Sarah and Ava are staying." Caroline wailed, "This is our home." I looked at her the way I looked at her when she was 6 and tried to blame the broken vase on the dog. "No, darling, it was my home. Now it's Sarah's." Robert tried to bluster about lawyers. Letitia handed him her card. "Call my office after the holidays. We'll send you the certified copies." The string quartet, sensing the mood, switched to "We Wish You a Merry Christmas" in a very fast 6/8, like they were trying to hurry the devils out. Margaret was the last to leave. She stood in the doorway in her red velvet, pearls shaking. "You'll regret this, Mother." I smiled. "The only thing I regret is waiting 41 years to do it." The door closed behind them with the gentle finality of a coffin lid, and the house on Oglethorpe Square suddenly felt 20 pounds lighter. After the door shut behind my 3 children, the house did something it hadn't done in decades. It exhaled. The string quartet, now completely on my side, switched to Amazing Grace without being asked. Ava started dancing in circles around the Christmas tree. Sarah stood in the middle of the parlor, crying happy tears, while the photographer kept clicking, like this was the society wedding of the century. Letitia raised her mimosa. To truth, consequences, and little girls who finally get to meet their grandmother. We drank to that. The rest of Christmas Day was pure magic. Sarah and I sat on the sofa and looked at old photo albums, while Ava unwrapped 41 years' worth of presents I'd bought for a dead son and saved in the attic. Every wooden soldier, every picture book, every little sailor suit found its rightful owner. We ate cinnamon rolls until we were sick, drank cocoa with too many marshmallows, and let Ava hang the new star on top of the tree, a silver one I'd bought in Perth the week after Thomas's letter arrived. A newspaper photographer stayed until sunset. The article ran on the front page of the Savannah Morning News the day after Christmas. Dead hero alive, Savannah matriarch reunites with long-lost son's family, rewrites $40 million estate in dramatic Christmas revelation. Below the fold was a photograph of me, Sarah, and Ava under the tree, arms around each other, smiling like we'd known each other forever. My 3 other children were mentioned exactly once in the caption. Mrs. Prescott's other children declined to comment. They did more than decline. Margaret called every cousin, aunt, and country club member she knew to cry elder abuse. Robert threatened to sue the newspaper for defamation. Caroline posted a tearful Instagram story about a mother's betrayal at Christmas that got 40,000 views before someone pointed out the comments were turned off. None of it mattered. The trusts were ironclad. The deeds were recorded. The money was already moving. By New Year's, Sarah and Ava and I were on a plane to Perth so I could meet my son one last time before the cancer took him. We landed on January 3rd. Thomas was waiting in a wheelchair at arrivals, thin, yellow, but with the same eyes I'd kissed goodnight when he was 8 years old. I didn't say a word. I just walked straight into his arms and held him while we both cried like babies. Sarah and Ava stood back until he opened one arm and said, voice cracking, "Come here, you two. Family hug." We stayed in Perth 6 weeks. I watched my son teach his daughter to fish off the Fremantle Pier. I watched Ava chase seagulls on Cottesloe Beach, while Thomas told her stories about the grandfather she'd never met. On February 14th, Thomas died peacefully in his sleep with all 3 of us holding his hands. The funeral was small, on a cliff overlooking the Indian Ocean. I scattered his ashes where he asked, into the wind that would carry him home. When we flew back to Savannah in March, the house on Oglethorpe Square had a new nameplate by the door. Prescott House, home of Eleanor, Sarah, and Ava Prescott. All are welcome. Son, our family. The camellias were blooming red and white, and for the first time in 41 years, every place at my Christmas table would finally be filled. We buried Thomas's memory the Savannah way, with a proper Episcopal service at Christ Church, magnolia wreaths on the doors, and a reception afterward in the parish hall that smelled of ham biscuits and old money. Half the town came. The other half stayed away on spring break, but they sent flowers big enough to hide behind. My 3 other children did not attend. Sarah wore the same navy dress from Christmas morning. Ava carried a single white camellia from my garden and laid it on the altar when the rector asked if anyone wanted to place a token of remembrance. After the service, the rector took me aside. "Mrs. Prescott, your son's letter to the congregation is in the narthex if you'd like to read it." Thomas had written it the week before he died. I stood in the quiet church and read his last words to Savannah. "To my mother. I was a coward for 41 years. My mother was brave enough for both of us. She gave my daughter what I never could, a name, a home, and a future. Please be kind to them. They are the best of the Prescott blood." I folded the letter, put it in my purse next to his baby picture, and walked out into the March sunshine. Life settled into the sweetest rhythm I've known since before the telegram came. Sarah enrolled Ava in St. Andrew's School on a scholarship I quietly arranged. She took over the East Wing, painted it soft green, and turned the old sewing room into an office for the Children's Literacy Foundation she started with part of the trust. I taught her how to make red velvet cake the way my mother did, with buttermilk and a full cup of cocoa. She taught me how to use an iPhone without throwing it across the room. Every Sunday we drive to Bonaventure Cemetery. We leave flowers on the empty grave that bears Thomas's name. Then we drive 10 minutes to the new stone I had placed last month. Thomas Prescott, 1948 to 2026. Beloved son, father, and prodigal, who finally found his way home. Underneath, in smaller letters, he was forgiven long before he asked. Margaret, Robert, and Caroline tried one last time in April. They filed an emergency petition, claiming undue influence and testamentary incapacity. The judge, a woman who'd once been my student in Sunday school, threw it out in 9 minutes flat and sanctioned them for frivolous litigation. The Savannah Morning News ran the headline, "Prescott siblings lawsuit dismissed. Judge, some gifts are too generous to be contested." That was the last we heard from them. This Christmas will be the first in 42 years with every chair filled. Sarah is roasting a goose. Ava is learning Silent Night on the flute. I'm teaching them both how to make my mother's pecan tassies. There's a new stocking on the mantle. Thomas, stitched in the same red yarn as the others. Sometimes, late at night, I walk to the Widow's Walk and look out over the squares. The lights of Savannah twinkle like they always have, but everything feels different. Because forgiveness isn't just letting go of anger. Sometimes it's letting go of everything else too, and giving it to the one person who never asked for it in the first place. If you're ever in Savannah on Christmas Eve, come by Oglethorpe Square after the cathedral service. The door will be open, the fire will be lit, and there will be room for one more at the table. Because some family you're born with, some family finds you when you're 87 and the world thinks your story is over. Mine was just beginning. Merry Christmas, y'all.